We have arrived in Mokum in the northern Netherlands. Mokum is on the IJsselmeer in the province of Friesland and is our port of departure. May 5th, 1976. This is day one actually on the boat and traveling. We are on the Waddenzee, traveling from Mokum to Den Helder. We are two families comprised of 4 adults and 3 children, ages 5, 11, and 12. This is as close as we had to get to sailing on the ocean in Europe. At home, in the Pacific Northwest of North America, the ocean was all we ever sailed on. Our boat, called the Enterprise, is a converted shallow draft Dutch trawler, 70 feet long. It is powered by a diesel World War II air-cooled German tank engine. Sleeping arrangements included 3 double cabins amidships, a large aft cabin, and a small single in the forecastle. The wheelhouse was large and served as lounge and dining area. Just down and forward of the galley were 2 separate heads and a shower. We had most of the comforts of home, plus an ever-changing view. The boat was economical to run, and we had not the slightest problem during the trip. It was hard to believe that only 7 months ago we were playing cards on our boat on Vancouver Island, wondering what we would be doing this year. It really was a spur-of-the-moment decision that we decided to cruise on the canals and rivers of Western Europe. It did not take long to feel we had made a good decision, as scenes like this became common. Soon we were in Amsterdam, where we stayed for 5 days. Did some sightseeing, confirmed our financial arrangements, met a friend from home for dinner, and bought bikes for everyone from a local flea market. Some of the locals told us they were probably stolen, but that did not seem to deter the crowds of shoppers, or us. The city was filled with waterways of all sizes, and there were many liveaboards. Not being able to speak Dutch was not a problem, as it seemed most of the people here spoke English, and they were friendly and helpful. This is where we were moored near the center of town. It had a great backyard and was close to everything we needed. We are starting to become comfortable with the boat and shopping for food, fuel, and cooking gas. It was now May 12th and we were on our way again. We had a skipper with us for the first few days to teach us about the boat and canal and river navigation. It was clear that he loved being on the boat and roaming the country. It was also clear that he wanted to be skipper for the whole trip. That is probably why he provided a minimum of information and no navigation aids like maps or charts. It is also the likely reason that we seemed to be traveling a difficult route, where we found ourselves on a tiny overgrown creek and later amid sandbars and tidal currents. He continued to stress that what we were undertaking was difficult and required extensive local knowledge. We were not deterred in the slightest. Later, when we were on our own, we were able to find some charts, but they lacked the kind of detail we were used to, and at times we were concerned. Gradually we came to realize that for most of the trip, our routes were like little traveled country roads, where the greatest danger came from plastic bags being wrapped around the propeller. The scenery changed constantly, with views of farms, villages, cities, and only a few industrial areas. We knew that if we found the view unpleasant, it would change very soon, and often in a surprising manner. As the boat is ours for 5 months, we had to keep up with the maintenance, which included quite a bit of painting. We got the kids to start on that right away. Personally, I was glad to have some work to do, as it went hand in hand with boating. We are now in Belgium, and here on the Scheldt River, a great many barges are gathered for a wedding. Ghent is our second big city. Amazing architecture and old architecture. The people and the horses are friendly. We made an effort not to stand out as tourists. Traveling in a boat that looked like it could be a local workboat helped a lot. When it was discovered that we were tourists, saying we were from Canada almost always got a warm response. This became a familiar sight on any of the major waterways, waiting for a lock to empty so that we and others might enter. Compared to our boat, these working barges are formidable. Even when fully loaded and half underwater, their size made us stay well clear, particularly on the small canals. Many were traveling homes that were often stunning in the quality of their appearance. A note from our log. It was exciting to find a store that stocked items like ketchup, peanut butter, and Rice Krispies. The skipper has left the boat and is headed home. As she had commandeered the prestigious aft cabin, we are glad that it is now ours to share. A note from our log. Errors in translation caused us to get a rabbit when we ordered carrots, and ice cream was brought instead of the glasses of water we wanted. We are now on the Scarpe River, which is fully canalized, and soon we will be in France. This is quite typical of the free moorage that is available on the smaller rivers and canals in the country. This beautiful canal is built on the side of a hill. The well-maintained towpaths beside many of the canals provided a great place to get off the boat and get a bit of exercise riding bikes. It was not hard to match the speed of the boat. May 21. We know we have left the Low Countries, as today we went through 14 locks. We are in France. A note from our log. We saw one brave hitchhiker swimming in the canal rather than walking alongside on the path. The Canal St. Quentin has taken us to our first tunnel, and it is a long one. We are told 5.67 kilometers. The boats are tied together as we will be towed through via a chain moving on the bottom of the canal. About halfway through we stop, and to our surprise we are able to sleep for about 7 hours. In the morning, we completed the trip without difficulty. This is the machinery that pulls the chain. It is an engine-driven windlass mounted on a barge. The chain moves, the barge does not. A little R&R in St. Quentin and then on to the Seine River via Campagne, Pontoise, Puteaux, and Saint Honorine. Please do excuse the pronunciation. May 29. We are on the Seine River, headed for Paris. It is exciting. We have 17 kilometers to go. By the time we reached Paris, we have passed through 82 locks of all sizes and types, under 235 bridges of all sorts, and traveled 813 winding and twisting kilometers in 55 days. Our pace is leisurely, and we are grateful to have the time. One large lock and lots of unusual liveaboards, but we are distracted from the scenery as we are looking ahead for our first view of Paris, which we expect to be the Eiffel Tower. Seeing a building with the name Louis Blériot on it was one of many reminders about European history. I was surprised by the effect it had on me upon seeing the first glimpse of that famous tower. This is Paris, and we looked forward to seeing all those things that we've heard about for most of our lives. The first night in Paris, we moored at the touring club's docks, which was the first of only 2 places that we had to pay moorage fees during the whole trip. There were many tour boats running day and night. The next day, we found free moorage only a short distance away, adjacent to La Place de la Concorde. Later, we moved across the river to a spot almost in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, and close by Pont de Bourg-Hakim. We spent 10 days in Paris, but never scratched the surface. We visited the Louvre, walked the Champs-Élysées, climbed the Eiffel Tower, marveled at the architecture of Notre Dame Cathedral, and did a host of other things, both usual and unusual. We felt very fortunate that we could tour Paris from the river, taking our own time and staying as long as we liked. These are views of Notre Dame Cathedral from our boat. I couldn't refuse the opportunity, but taking the wheel of one of these huge working barges was quite unnerving. June 10. We are leaving Paris and heading approximately southeast on the Seine. That will soon change to the Yonne. We have pointed to a spot on the map and chosen Besançon as our destination for this leg. It is about 500 kilometers, and we are looking forward to seeing all the places with names I cannot pronounce that are on our chart. One of our reference books says there is a stretch of 48 locks in 30 kilometers. That will be a day's work. A note from our log. 3 of the things we bought in Paris were a washing machine, a foam mattress, and one of the men bought bikini swim trunks. This is the first of the large locks with sloping sides that we will see. They look difficult, proved to be easy. Like most of the small locks in France, they are manual, which we usually operated ourselves. A note from our log. A lockkeeper that spoke near perfect English was unusual. The one we found only had 2 phrases, "I like Ike" and "Howdy boys," learned during World War II. The locks often provided more than free passage. Very often there were birds and animals to play with. Regularly there were vegetables to buy and occasionally rabbits. It is Sunday, June the 20th, Father's Day, and we take the day off. It is good that we did, as we are in the middle of a heat wave over most of Western Europe. The temperature in the wheelhouse is 36 degrees, and that is not good timing, as we are at that part of the canal where there are 48 locks in 29 kilometers. We decided to try to do it in one day. We practiced the day before, yesterday, by doing 17 locks over 31 kilometers. Fortunately, we can take swimming breaks. This is one of several rock cuts we encountered. We never found out what the protocol was if another boat was met. This is very typical of an upstream passage through a small French lock on the Bourgogne Canal. The process is simple but slow. Enter the lock and close the downstream gates and sluices. Then open the upstream sluices. When the lock is full, the upstream gates can be opened and you are done. A note from our log. When leaning over the side of the boat to drop a line over a bollard as we entered a lock, a center of gravity shift caused someone to somersault off the boat. Fortunately, and very luckily, she landed on her feet on the lock wall rather than in the water. This is the approach to the tunnel at Pouilly. It was narrow, and we did not know the protocol. Eventually, someone showed up who showed us how to lash logs to the boat to keep it off the tunnel walls as we traveled through under our own power. He said he would let us know when it was okay to proceed, and eventually he did. We had no difficulty, but the overhead power cables were unnerving. A note from our log. Only once did we have to cut a line because it hung up on a cleat as the water drained from a lock. The terrain is quite different here, and we see mountains, which is pleasant as it continues to be hot. The next day brought rain, and we are grateful. Soon we are on the canal Rhône-Sur-Doubs, which seems more rocky river than canal. Our destination of Besançon is close. Besançon is uniquely situated in a loop in the river that almost makes the city an island. On top is a very old citadel ruin. A tunnel runs through the hill near its narrowest part, which cuts off quite a distance for boats and barges. A note from our log. A German shepherd named Jerry was allowed by the proprietor to join us while we had dinner at a restaurant. He was quite polite and mostly only rested his chin on the table. It's July 11th, and it is hot again, and in spite of having to dive to cut a large piece of plastic off the propeller, we did 24 locks. After dinner we probably should not have, but we had a small campfire on the shore. Our next stop is Basel, Switzerland. July 18. After enjoying side trips in Switzerland and to Liechtenstein, we are now back on the Grand Canal d'Alsace, heading for Strasbourg. The river and locks are large, with quite a bit of traffic, both pleasure and commercial. We do a record for distance traveled, 127 kilometers, with only 8 locks. We weren't trying to hurry. The miles just slipped by. A note from our log. We saw corn growing in many fields, but got very odd looks when we asked to buy some to eat. Turns out only animal feed corn was growing there. We stayed in Strasbourg for 4 days in this beautiful location, while waiting for friends from home to join us. We could not have picked a better place. We spent an evening with 2 couples that operated a traveling circus on a barge, tied nearby. We rode our bikes to Germany, just across the river, for some shopping. And of course, did a lot of sightseeing in this historic city of Strasbourg. A note from our log. Knowing how deep the water is can help avoid split lips when diving or running aground on mud banks. We are now in the Canal de la Marne au Rhin, enjoying the beauty of the Vosges and looking forward to a ride on the inclined plane. Sometimes the tunnels did not look nearly large enough, and with the mast up, some weren't. The lock dogs were always glad to see us. From Litzelberg to Schneckenbusch it was 13 kilometers in the rain. We went under 8 bridges, through 4 locks and 2 tunnels, and up the inclined plane. This inclined plane replaced 17 locks, so it was a big time saver. This was also where we met one of the few other tourist boats we saw on the smaller canals. I don't know if it was that there were just very few people doing this, or if they avoided the places less traveled, which is what we sought out. Doing a bit of research, I note that in 1975 only 145 pleasure craft used this lift. In 1979 it was 524, and in 2004 it was 6,624, so we certainly traveled in less busy times. By the time we reached Nancy, which is just ahead, we had passed through 475 locks, under 575 bridges, both fixed and lift, traveled 1,790 kilometers, and using rough math, determined that we were getting about 3.8 miles per gallon. In this part of the country, it was the cows that chased the dogs. July 29. We are now in Nancy and preparing to leave the boat for 3 weeks to travel by train to Italy, Austria, and Germany, and then back to Paris, where we will rejoin the boat. A friend from Canada is joining us for this part of the trip. We very much enjoyed train travel in Europe. Rejoining the boat in Paris was like coming home. A pot of coffee and some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches made everything right in the world after our 6-hour train trip from Heidelberg. August 28. After retracing a short distance on the Seine and Loire rivers, which we were happy to do, we were back in Campagne and heading east on the Aisne River. After that comes the Canal Lateral à la Aisne, the Canal des Ardennes, the Canal de l'Est, and the Meuse River. It is September the 1st. Our friend boarded the train this morning to catch his flight home. We are now very comfortable with the boat and the routines of life on the water in Europe. Even though there is almost a month until we have to be in Amsterdam to catch our plane home, I have to fight the urge to hurry. On September 4th, the ladies and the kids did it all, which on this day meant 27 locks in only 9 kilometers. The little girls, Lynn and Chris, are becoming pros. I think they could handle the boat and the locks on their own. Autumn on the Meuse River in the Ardennes is very beautiful dressed in fall colors. I'm a bit nervous as we could not find even a rudimentary chart for this area. A road map has serious limitations. We will be in Belgium soon, so perhaps we will find one there. Many reminders of World War II in this area. We often see small farms and goats on the little islands that are created by canalizing the rivers. There are many familiar place names in this area: Dinant, Namur, Fumay, Liège, Givet. Likely we heard them many times during news reports of the war. We have the time, so are doing lots of tourist type things in these interesting places. Toured a cave and a citadel high above the river, shopped a bit, and ate out at places that looked like where the locals eat. Not many locks here, and the few that we have seen are very large. It is September 14, and we are in Liège. Luckily, we have met some other travelers, and they have given us a good chart that shows us the way home. Had a foggy day and watched a barge hit the bank, but not a serious problem. We have crossed the border into the Netherlands and put to coop for sale signs on the bikes, and two sold right away. We have found a good place to fill the fuel and water tanks and buy full gas bottles, as we want to leave the boat in good shape. A lock keeper called me skipper, so I guess I have passed some kind of test. We found the Ooster dock quite easily and a decent place to moor, where we were to have rendezvous and hand over the boat. We are grateful for the borrowed chart, as this is a busy harbor. The logbook tells us that we have passed through 603 locks, under 861 bridges, up one inclined plane, over one aqueduct, and covered 2,641 kilometers, or 1,637 miles. An interesting figure is an average 4.4 kilometers per lock. We were sorry to feel the trip end as we left the Enterprise for the last time. I am recording this last bit of narration on my 80th birthday, February 12, 2015. What amazing trips they have been.